another episode of the Speak Real podcast, sharing one-on-one conversations. We believe that storytelling is the best way to empower youth and give them the platform to find their voices.
Presented by YouthSpeak. Youth experience, youth voice, youth empowered.
Well, hello everybody. How are you all doing here? We're back here with another episode of Speak Real podcast. Now, of course, you're going to see this face and be like, who is this guy? What is he doing here? Where's everybody else and all the beautiful people? Well, I'm going to be going on here today. Sometimes you'll catch me in here, dropping with some awesome guests as always. When do we never have an awesome guest, right? So we're going to be talking here today with a naturopathic doctor, and it's going to be some pretty incredible stuff. But she's going to share her adventures with us, speak about some coping techniques and some tools and some of the case studies that she's been through. So it's, we're in here for a very interesting conversation. But before we get started though, of course I have to introduce myself, this new face. It's Christian. My name is Christian. I'm going to be here on behalf of YouthSpeak Canada. Glad to have you all here tuning in once again. And of course, got to give a big shout out here to our sponsor, TD Bank, putting it, just showing us some love, supporting us as we go ahead here with our IG Lives and the podcast that you're watching right now. So that's in case you catch us on YouTube. And little did you know, yes, we do IG Lives as well. So make sure to follow us everywhere, Instagram, Twitter, wherever it may be. We definitely appreciate any support. But without further ado, though, I do want to bring tonight's guest. It's going to be Dr. Bisleen. I'd like to let her introduce herself. Well, welcome back. Hey, I see, I wasn't lying. We do have our guest here for tonight, Dr. Bisleen. Let us know how it be. What's up? Introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here. Do you want to do a full introduction?
No, I want to go ahead. Yeah, introduce yourself. Definitely, all the projects you're about, all of it.
Yeah, so I am a naturopathic doctor. I've recently started my own virtual clinic called the Mental Empowerment Center. So it's fully focused on really just teaching people how to master their mental health and work through specifically their anxiety and depression. I also have my own mental health campaign called All About Mental Empowerment. So I do a lot of workshops in the communities with different schools and organizations, teaching people the basics of mental health and giving them the step-by-step approach they need to master their resilience. And currently right now we are working on implementing 6-week mental health courses in schools. So that's a big project that I'm working on right now. Yeah.
Jeez. Oh my God, you're everywhere. How do you do it? Oh my, how do you have the energy? Look at you. You're always ready to go, So definitely hearing all those projects, got to give a big shout out and big thank you to giving us some time of your day. I know, that you could be doing so many other things, but it's going to be an awesome conversation that we're going to have tonight. So, we're going to get started with our first question here of the night. Would you kindly share your own story of a battle with mental health?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with depression when I was 16. So that was when I was about in grade 10, grade 11. And I remember when I was first diagnosed, I'd known that I just felt sadness for a very long time, but I didn't really know what it meant. And my doctor was like, oh, you have depression, here, take these happy pills and you'll feel better. And I was like, okay. And I just left the doctor's office being so confused. I was like, what does this mean? And I talked to my parents about it and they were like, you don't need any antidepressant medication. You'll be fine. You're going to go to university soon and everything will get better. But that's like telling someone with a broken arm, go from your kitchen to your living room and you'll start to feel better, right? A change in environment doesn't fix things. And so I unfortunately didn't get that support that I really needed. And my life just started to spiral downwards. I went from being a straight A student and athlete, super involved member of my community, to then quitting all my sports teams, failing some of my classes, and my life just did a complete 180. And to this day, I don't even know how I made it to university, but I am so glad that I did. I went to Waterloo University, and things kind of got worse for me in first year and especially second year, because now I was away from my home and away from my parents. So I didn't really have that much support. And things got so bad that I actually ended up in the hospital in my second year of university. And I think that's when I was just really like, whoa, things are bad now. And I remember one of my best friends, I remember that night so clearly too. And she was literally like sleeping beside me. And I remember just looking up and staring at the ceiling when I was lying in that hospital bed. And I was just like, okay, like things have to change, because there could be a chance that next time I come in here, I will not be leaving. Right. And so when I left the hospital, I literally made a list of everything that I felt like was wrong in my life. And I set about changing all of those things one step at a time. I started talking to different doctors and counselors. I started putting hours and hours of research just to see, you know, what types of foods I should be eating, how much exercise should I be getting. And then, you know, after putting in all that work, I was finally able to get to a place of having great mental health. And I didn't even know a place like this existed, like to actually, you know, be in a place where you feel good most of the time. It's like, whoa, like this is possible. I know, right? It is, I swear it is. And so, you know, it's after going through my journey, you know, and meeting so many people along the way who were also suffering, I was like, someone needs to help these people, you know, because the biggest thing about mental health is, I remember in my journey, it was like, it just seems so overwhelming because you're just feeling pain all the time. You're feeling sadness all the time. And you're just like, I don't even know what to do. And you just wish that when I was younger, I literally wish someone would just come and just grab it out of me and like chuck it into a garbage can. Right. I wish that was possible. Unfortunately, it's not. I'm still trying to figure that one out. And that's what I really wanted to do. I just wanted to eliminate the guesswork for so many people, because I did all that guesswork for 10 years. And so that's why I do so much of what I do, because I really want to help people create that strategic plan and tell them, like, this is where you start, this is where you're going to end up. And these are all the steps that you need to do on the way to help yourself get there, because no one is teaching that and sharing that. Right. So yeah, that's my mental health journey. And, you know, I'm still working on my mental health all the time, because it's a never ending journey. But at least, you know, once you start doing the work, you get an idea as to how to work on it and what are the things you need to do on a daily basis. So yeah.
I mean, we're going to get into that afterwards as well,
Yeah.
about mental health and physical health. But, you know, when you say that whole thing about, you know, oh, we could be happy, like we can do this, you know, you ever have those moments where it's like things are good and you're happy and you're like, no, something bad's gonna happen. Like this is, you know, it's like, you know, you're like, this is too good to be true. I'm not allowed to feel like this. And that's what it comes, it comes across like that. We tell ourselves these things, right? So of course we'll get into that afterwards as well, about like resilience and coping techniques, but like, you know, self-talk, like how we are talking to ourselves. Unfortunately, that's one of those things, right? It's not wrong to feel good. It's okay, guys. You can feel okay. You can put a smile on your face.
And you're right. As soon as we start telling ourselves, whoa, this is too good to be true, you know what happens? It becomes too good to be true. As soon as you start telling yourself, I can't feel this, something bad's going to happen, and something bad does happen.
Boom.
Right?
Yep. That's how it is. Yeah. So, you know, exactly. And, you know, it sucks. Like you're like hearing your story, obviously it hurts, because like a lot of us can relate. Of course, myself can relate to, you know, my own bouts of depression as well. Obviously a battle's still ongoing and such, but I mean, you know, it gives you that resilience, and we're going to be speaking about that later on. But man, you know, the pills, when they slap you with the pill, sometimes you feel like your self-worth went down sometimes. And it's like, it's one of those things where we should try to, it's difficult. Like now that mental health is starting to come into the light, of course, people are starting to become more aware of it. We don't have to be so ashamed to be taking care of ourselves, no matter how we have to do it. So it was just, remember you saying that, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that too. Here's your happy pills. Get on out there, be a functioning member of society.
Totally.
It's like, man, but you know, that's like one of those things where you just put a band-aid over like actual problems, right? So but anyhow, we'll go ahead here to our next question, right? We know debilitating mental health is finally being brought to light. Oof, we segue well to that. And how young can we go? What are some of the different age groups you have seen?
So I personally haven't done like work with like very young kids. I think like the youngest I've done is middle school, but I have done workshops for elementary schools. But of course, that's like different types of work. But I mean, really with mental health, it can affect anyone at any age. And the biggest thing about kids, because I've done, you know, quite a few workshops for parents, is that kids are like beautiful in the sense that they're such great absorbers and they're sponges, right? And that's why you could teach a kid like 10 languages and they'll learn it all in like a week, right? But also it doesn't go so well because they also pick up on that bad stuff too, right? And kids are really good at sensing environments that are stressful, highly anxious, and they will internalize it. That's the other thing about kids as well, is the world revolves around them, right? It's just how kids work. So it's not that, mom can't play with them because mom is busy and doing work. It's mom can't play with them because mom doesn't like me, right? And kids are so good at internalizing and blaming themselves for everything because they don't have enough world experience to realize actually everything doesn't revolve around me, and they learn that when they get older, but it's too late by that time. Right. So, I mean, really it can affect anyone at any age. The other thing I've noticed with children and kids is that anxiety and depression come out in very different ways. Because again, kids don't really have that understanding to know what anxiety and depression is. So instead of being like, I am anxious or I'm thinking a lot of thoughts, it'll often come out in physical symptoms. So when kids have anxiety, they'll get stomach aches and headaches. Stomach aches is actually a very, very common symptom. Even depression, it might come out as like irritability and anger and all these emotional outbursts, right? Because again, they don't know the emotions that they're experiencing. So yeah, really it can go as young as it goes. Yeah, there's no age cutoff, unfortunately.
It's crazy that you say that. Like, it's not, it's finally, as we were mentioning before, like, we're starting to bring up these issues of mental health, and we don't really think about how young it can go. And you're mentioning middle school. Like, I never would have imagined that, right? And of course it's becoming a little bit more prevalent. I mean, you have differing home environments and such, but as you were mentioning, them being sponges, they could take any of that from home. And I love the fact that you mentioned just as much potential as they have to learn as much as they possibly can, that same potential also will be able to take in any of the negatives as well and the cons as well of life. And it's just I had to ask because I want to know, like, how young can it go. And so you've done for middle school, elementary, you've worked with adults, I'm assuming, as well.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
you've seen all sorts of cohorts, eh?
Yeah.
Oh
So
man.
elementary, I haven't been able to work one-on-one, but a few weeks ago I was doing a workshop for elementary school students, and I kid you not, I almost usually I don't tear up during workshops, even when I share my story, just because I've been doing it for years now. I am almost like immune to it. But wow, this workshop, I literally almost like choked up and teared up because these kids like grade 1, grade 2, and I was going through a storybook with them about anxiety and coping mechanisms. And I asked some of them, right? Like, do you feel stressed out? Do you feel anxious? And so many of the classes shouted out, yes, we feel anxious, we feel stressed. And it was nice that they were being vulnerable and sharing that. But at the same time, my heart almost broke a little bit because I'm just like, a 6-year-old feeling stressed and anxious. It's like they should be worried about what toy to play with next. It's just it's true.
I know.
It's a little heartbreaking.
No, I agree. I'm sorry. I just laughed
Yeah.
because it's true. It's like I'm thinking about myself at that age. Like, I'm pretty sure I was just like grabbing the next like wrestling toy or something, and not having to think about
Yeah.
that, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
of course, every period of time has its pros and cons. As we didn't have that many distractions as during my time. Toys were
Yeah.
like our thing, or sports were our
Yeah.
thing. Now,
Yeah.
you're pulled in so many different angles. So I'm sure, you get stressed from different ways.
Yes.
But I want
Yeah.
to ask, so is there any specific case studies you could bring up as example of a very young demographic? I feel like you did give one just there. Would you have another one you can share?
Yeah. I guess I can talk about one of my patients who was in middle school, and I feel like this is generally a little bit of a trend I've started to notice in young people. But then also keep in mind, I interact with a specific group of young people who need support, right? So I definitely have a little bit of
That's true.
bias in that as well. But what I've really noticed, this girl that I was working with, there's just a lot of parental dependency is what I've noticed in young people, to the point, where she was like texting her mom multiple times a day and like constantly needing to be around with her mom and sleeping with her mom and things like that. And I've noticed that even working with parents, I noticed parents wanting to cuddle their kids more and wanting to be more overprotective. And then I noticed equally the kids reciprocating that by becoming more dependent on them too. So yeah, it's a little bit of a complex relationship, but that's something that I've definitely noticed in my very young demographic that I work with. Yeah.
So you say with that relationship where it could be a beautiful thing, but also a detrimental thing, where it's like they depend on their
Yeah.
parents, and their parents, of course, will guide them into all these programs or this and that. But then at the same time, there's no space for their own decision making, or what would be something
Yeah.
you'd say?
Yeah. I guess less more so their own decision making, but more so just letting children problem solve on their own, letting them kind of work through their hurts and their pains a little bit on their own. I'm also generally noticing too, and maybe social media and stuff might play a role in this, but generally the lack of boundaries I'm noticing also young people having, right? And them like absorbing everything that comes their way instead of being like, whoa, 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 whoa. Do I want this to let this affect me? Right. Am I going to let this into my bubble and my space as well? Just a lot of that, lack of boundaries and just everything coming their way, and everything is because they're a horrible person and they're not good enough. So really
That whole
noticing
thing about boundaries. Oh man, like you were saying, we're in the information age. We got all these resources and accessibility online. Like Discord is like a big one I can mention, especially for like gaming
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah.
You get in there, they have like voice chats are like unlimited. It'll be like so many people just in there, and they're all talking about some of the most ridiculous things, and
Yeah.
it's just nuts to. Well, we live in that. So you're saying,
Yes.
especially when earlier you brought up with the sponge, imagine not only sponging all that stuff from home, but like you're saying, social media or Discord or all these things. Yeah, it's just everywhere, right?
Yeah, and being
So
bombarded. And then if you already are at a young age where, you're also learning how to set boundaries too, right? At that elementary, middle school, you're growing up, you're learning who you are, setting boundaries, but it does make it so much harder now when you're just bombarded with everything, right? Before you fully get a sense of yourself and who you are.
it could be like almost as if we're talking about a rush development too. You're trying to get pushed through these things real quickly instead of like you were mentioning, we used to have time to be able to come into who we are. Whereas now, like you're saying, bombarded by a lot of stimuli, you never know. Like you have to constantly question now in the state of age, right? Now that we don't know if that could factor into what you were saying about youth having to deal with depression and anxiety at such a young age. We don't know. It's just saying that these could be some of the factors in how our youth are just there's so much that they have to go through home, their family, the complex relationships that we now have, especially the availability, accessibility. It's just quite a lot. But it's another good segue here because our next question, right?
Yeah.
What do you think are the factors for those young who are suffering from mental health detriments, physically, emotionally, whatever you'd say? Take it away.
Yeah. Two of the biggest one, number one being lack of education. That's a huge one I notice. Even to the basics of, if you go on the street right now and if you ask like even just 10 people walking by, what is mental health? Like I guarantee like eight out of those 10 people won't know what to say. Right. Or they might have some guesses and stuff. Right. If that, again, that's just what I've noticed from the workshops that I've delivered and stuff. And so I really just think lack of education and people just not knowing, resources available to them, knowing, what are healthy coping strategies and things like that as well. I noticed that being like a huge, huge thing. And then also just access to care too is a big one. Because I think that mental health services, they can be expensive for some people too, right? Over time, because one counseling session isn't going to make you feel okay. Multiple probably will, and I know the ones that are free or at lower cost, there's often really long waiting periods, and having one session and then having to wait like 2-3 months to see someone else next. It's not as helpful versus being able to see someone regularly as well. So that access to care piece is really difficult too.
I love how you're bringing that up too. So they actually kind of go hand in hand because awareness is only being brought, and now because it's a subject in today, finally really heavily discussing our mental health, we're starting to slowly see benefits starting to pick up and start throwing in mental health services. But there's even to this day, there's still quite a lot that don't have them included. And yes, that's very expensive. It can get very expensive, and like you're saying, one's not enough, right? It has to be more. You have to make it's like a partnership with this person that you're speaking to be able to be comfortable and to be vulnerable and then really dig deep and get into these roots of the problems, right? So it's great. Those are really two big factors. I agree too. Like
Yeah.
growing up myself, actually, I can share that too. Growing up myself, like I never could have gone in that. My parents would never have had benefits to get those kind of things. Even when I went
Same.
to school, university, you get your little benefits, you're like, yo, benefits, and then
Yeah.
no, and it's so
I
hurts,
know.
right?
It's a big one. Yeah.
But it's great that we're going to be talking about the fact of the topic of mental health, and we were talking about how it needs to be treated, similar to what physical health, right? So here we
Mhm.
go. Let's talk a bit
Yeah.
about lifestyle. Why don't we do that? Especially, I know for you, you're gonna love this. This is your
Ah,
alley, right? So
yes.
let's talk a bit about lifestyle. Considering discussion of the last question, how do you think lifestyle impacts mental health overall?
Yeah. Oh my God, this question. I'm already getting excited with it. Like this is lifestyle. Let's go. This is what naturopathic medicine is all about.
Exactly, I knew
Um,
it.
so huge impact, massive impact. Like lifestyle is so big. And this is actually the reason why I decided to go become a naturopathic doctor versus going down the route of trying to become a psychiatrist. Because I noticed in my mental health journey, I was getting support with counselors. I was even on antidepressant medication. I think I took it for about 10 months. And during that time, I was feeling pretty good, but I just felt like something was missing. Like I was feeling okay, but like I still wasn't where I wanted myself to be. And that's when I started really breaking down like, okay, what is my lifestyle, right? What are the foods I'm eating? How much exercise am I getting? How much sleep am I getting? What are the actions and habits that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis? Are they contributing to my happiness or my sadness, right? And it's when I started working on all those things, still going to counseling, still taking the antidepressants, that I was like, whoa, now it all fits. It all works together. And when I started working on my lifestyle, I was able to wean myself off my antidepressant medications because ultimately that's how, and I know we're going to talk actually more about that in a little bit. So maybe I'll save it for that. But it's my lifestyle habits that have carried me forward, and they allow me to maintain great mental health regardless of supplements and medications, you know? And so I always love to give the example of this like sunflower analogy, right? And this is so with a lot of us, when we think about mental health, right? We think about doing mindset work. We think about, okay, I got to wake up. I got to tell myself like I'm beautiful, I'm awesome, I'm radiating with, I don't know, like the sun, whatever. And, pause all that stuff. Yes, it makes a difference. All that mindset stuff, it helps, right? But what that mindset stuff is like, it's like a sunflower growing outside, right? The sun is shining, sunflowers growing. And then you take the sunflower and then you pluck it out of the ground and you throw it in your freezer and then you're upset that it's died, right? That's the same as kind of only working on your mind, because your mind is just one part of your body. There's no point in, doing all these wonderful exercises for your mind, but then not treating your body well, because the environment for your mind is your body, right? And of course, your external environment, that counts too, but your internal physical environment first, right? And so, so the top 3 lifestyle things I always kind of help support people work on is their diet, their exercise, and their sleep. Diet is like the most important. Okay. And I'm not going to get into like eat your vegetables, blah, blah. But really, why is it so important? And this is what people don't understand. The reason why diet's important is because it's literally the fuel of your body, right? Your protein, those are the building blocks for all your hormones and neurotransmitters. You're not eating enough protein. Your body literally is not able to build that. Fat is such a huge fuel source for your brain. You're not getting enough fats in your diet, and healthy fats, your brain literally can't function, right? And it's the same as thinking about fuel for a car. I'm all about analogies. So I'll give a car analogy. So thinking about like a Ferrari and a Toyota, right? 2 very different cars. If many of us had the option, we'd want the Ferrari. I know I definitely want the Ferrari, right? Now, Ferrari and Toyota, they take very different fuel. You can't put the same fuel in a Toyota and put it in a Ferrari because that engine will break down really fast. So that's the same thing that goes for our bodies. If we want our bodies to function like a premium car, like a Ferrari, we have to give it premium fuel, right? And pizza ain't going to cut it. Okay, I love my pizza, but only once. I know. I wish. I've really tried to look at all the ins and outs, all the loopholes, but pizza.
Gotta cancel my Uber Eats order. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
But
Ahead,
that's
sorry.
the same example. And I always tell my patients, like, our bodies are honestly incredible. especially our brains, because our brains are constantly building new neurons, new neural pathways and connections on a daily basis. They've even done research studies on brains of 80-year-olds to show that even at that age, your brain is constantly changing and rebuilding itself, right?
Yeah,
And
I
so
think I remember something about that. Like physically, like although our brain, like our mind and brain, they develop in tandem up to a certain point. The body might start deteriorating at 30, but the brain could keep developing. Plus, you can factor in neuroplasticity as well. So there's always
that's
room
what
to
this
grow.
is.
And exactly what we're
Always.
talking about, like, remember we were talking about self-talk actually? That negative stuff that we're saying, oh man,
Mhm.
too good right now, something bad's gonna happen. That is the kind of stuff that you can change with what you were just saying, how with like your neurotransmitters and neuroplasticity change the way we think and to be more
Yeah.
positive, just like how we incorporate positive like physical qualities, like you were saying, let's eat properly, let's exercise, sleep better, things like that to
Yeah.
treat your body better is the same way you want to treat your mind better. And of course, like you mentioned, we are going to get into that as well later on. But
Yeah.
it was interesting. You brought up that 80-year-olds too can still learn. So I love that.
Yeah. And that's a really huge piece when it comes to mental health, which I find, I even experienced that when I was going through my depression, thinking that this is it. I'm going to think like this forever. I can never get better. And that's a huge problem with so many people that have mental health concerns is they end up getting stuck in this mindset of this pain is going to be with me forever. This anxiety is going to be with me forever. I can't
Yes.
ever overcome it. And it's so important to remember. And one of the first steps is to realize you can overcome it. You can change. Your brain can think in a new way, you know?
It's
And
so hard at the time though,
it is hard.
It's so
It
hard,
is
right?
very hard. And
A
that's why
lot
you need
of
to
a
get
lot of work.
it is. And that's why you get support, right? You need to get support from someone who can tell you that, remind you that, give you the steps to show you that, right? And teach you how
Yeah.
you can do that. Because I always like to say, it's also very hard to come up with a solution when you're in the problem mindset. That's why working with a practitioner or someone else in that field can be so helpful because they are in the solution mindset, right? And they're
Oh, I do
outside
like
of the
that.
situation than you. So yeah, and so that's the diet piece of things. Now I also just find, really telling people the whys of why they should be doing something can be so much more helpful and motivating, right? So for example, exercise, we all know it's good, we all know we should be like moving and stuff, right? But really, why? They've done studies to show that when you exercise, that's when your brain actually starts building new neurons and neural pathways. So that's when neurogenesis begins. There's increased blood flow to your brain when you start moving. Your body immediately releases feel-good hormones and neurotransmitters. Your stress hormone shoots way down, right? And this is not stuff I'm making up. This is like they've
No,
done
you're
legit
not.
studies to
Oh, I know.
show this. So that's how powerful that can be. And then sleep, of course. Again, I think we're such a sleep deprived community too. And I think that 80% of us would be happier, at least, if we all just got enough sleep. Right. And it's all about like simple changes. Like don't be on your phone 30 minutes before bed. Right. Simple change. A lot of people have difficulty with this, but all of that stuff impacts our sleep. And our sleep is so important because that's when we're really repairing ourselves, rebuilding, taking the stuff we've learned during the day. So important for young people and students and consolidating that into long-term memory and stuff. So lifestyle it's a huge impact on mental health. But then also keeping in mind too, something I also do in my practice is also making sure the body is physiologically functioning right too, and making sure that physical aspect is working well. So I conduct a lot of blood tests and stuff with my patients and making sure their numbers are okay. And then sometimes you do have to supplement and give additional support while people are working on their lifestyle changes, right? Because those take time to build. You can't go from eating pizza every day to now eating like tons of vegetables. That takes a few weeks and months to build. And so, but those are the things at the end of the day that help carry you forward for the rest of your life, right? So important.
It's insanity to think just how much like those simple changes do. So, for example, I love how you brought up neurogenesis and exercise because once I learned that, I remember in university, I'm like, that's it. I used to before studying for exams, go to the gym, get on that treadmill, do whatever, just like
Yeah.
get that neurogenesis going because I think it's activated for about 2 hours, and then I'll go
Yeah.
and study right after. So I love that.
Yeah.
And then also, yeah, for sleeping, like there was a podcast I was listening to. Yeah, I'm talking about a podcast on a podcast. We're about
Yeah.
that. So, it was about the fact that when we're lack of sleep, or like let's say we're sleep deprived, we are actually equivalent to being a drunk individual. And they were thinking to themselves, like they were able to, like just from the test that they're able to do it, they conducted some tests while they were drunk, and they conducted the test when they were sleep deprived. And they were like,
Yeah.
there are so many things I do when I'm sleep deprived, aka, pseudo drunk, that I would not do if I knew I was drunk, like talk to my boss or drive. And it's like, imagine that we're such a lack of sleep society. And you're mentioning about consolidating our anything that we've learned that day. It's true, that happens in our sleep, and we're not even letting ourselves sleep, right? Because we're there too busy on our phone with that blue screen all day. It's just, I gotta get that one more Candy Crush little combo. No, man.
Yeah.
So that reminds me, so that goes right to the next question. We were just like, you were just mentioning about it, right? Where it's like, is it something that we can work on? And should we always rely on medication, or can we go away from it?
Yeah. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, naturopathic doctor, you're against medication. Not at all. Okay. And I always tell people, like, if you're with a doctor and they're very against supplements or they're very against medications, run. Like, no. Right. I feel like no doctor should ever be in a mindset where they were so strict and rigid on some sort of way of healing, right? Because there's so many different ways to heal out there, right? And different things work for different people. And when it comes to medication, I even mentioned before that I took medication and I was on it for about 10 months, but I went in with the mindset that I'm going to use this medication short term while I build my other habits and learn more techniques to improve my mental health, and then I will get off it. A lot of people go into medications thinking, oh, there's something wrong with my biology. I'm going to take this medication. I need it for the rest of my life. And it is what it is. And that's it. And they never work in their mental health, never do anything. And that's a very dangerous mindset to be in, right? And really, these medications aren't meant to be used very long term. Now, I will admit that I do think that there are a small subset of people in our population that really do not have the biology and physiology to support their mental health. And so there are some people that might need medications forever. And there are some conditions where it's questionable that people might need to be on medications for a very long time, right? Like schizophrenia, bipolar are some examples of that. I also don't have enough experience to talk about, not being off medication on those specific conditions. But I really think that for general conditions like anxiety and depression, that really the goal of medication should be use them short term, work on building your lifestyle habits, and then get yourself off them, right? But a lot of patients aren't educated on that. They don't know about that. And I don't hate medications at all. I think that they can be very powerful and useful for some people, but if they are used for those reasons. And even as a naturopathic doctor, usually when I work with patients, I almost always in the first visit give them some supplements, right? Because the thing is that when you're in this state of very high emotion, high intensity, it's so difficult for me to tell people, eat a carrot, right? Like you don't even want to get out of bed, right? Let alone eating carrot. That's a whole other story, right? And so what taking medications and supplements does, it helps to lower the intensity of the symptoms so that you can actually start working on some of those foundational habits.
I like that you're talking about that, because it's true. Like, medication is great. Like, I mean, I'm still on it myself. I feel like I function properly with it right now. So it's one of those things where I'm like, at first I took it, then I'm like, oh no, like beneath me, like I cannot subject myself to medication. But no, if it helps, it helps, whatever the case is. But I love that you bring up the fact that at the end of the day, if you just take it and don't do anything else in your life, that is literally just a band-aid, and it's not going to help in the long run. Like, you need to really work on the other things, and that's what's great about it. Like, I love that you're a naturopathic doctor that's not just being like, oh my God, medication. No, but it's great that you allow the fact that there's a care package, it all goes together, and it should be the same thing for other doctors too. Psychiatrists can't just be slapping around medication, happy pills, like we talked about earlier. Really get to the bottom of these things. So I love that you bring that up.
It's all about collaborative care, right? So no, I was just saying it's all about like collaborative care.
Exactly. But this is the question coming up. It's the big one. It's my favorite question right here. Oh no, my dog might bark. She might bark. That's how hype she is about the question, right? So let's talk a bit about mental health versus physical health and how they may not be as different as some may think. What are the similarities?
Both of them affect us. So that's
I didn't expect that answer out of you, but I mean, you're right. You're right. Oh
both of them
man.
affect us. So that's definitely number one. And really, like, I mean, it goes back to that same thing. Like, I feel like you're expecting like a very elaborate response here. But
No. Well, I will touch upon something. Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. But honestly, they're actually like, I can think about the one way that they're different, but aside from that, they're actually very similar in terms of how they impact and affect us, right? They impact our relationships, how we function in the world, how we perceive ourselves and the world around us. They impact us in every single way. The only way, so I guess I can talk about it in the one way that they're different. The one way that I would say that they're just different is that physical illnesses are a lot easier to recognize than mental illnesses, right? You can suffer for a very long time internally and people don't realize it, versus if you have a broken arm, it can be easier to realize. And then also some physical illnesses aren't always the easiest to recognize either. Like, I'm just thinking about fatty liver disease, right? That's hard to recognize because you can't really see your liver, right? So there you go. That's a similarity too, I guess. Even some of them that you can't fully recognize unless you do blood tests and blood work, right? But yeah, I really just think that physical illnesses and mental illnesses, they impact us, impact our relationships, how we function in the world, and they're very similar.
Like what I was going to bring up was the fact that we talked about this before, where it's that we need to exercise our mental health and take care of our mental health the same way we do for our physical health. Like if we're going to be exercising, we're going to be dieting, a lot of times people don't think about their mental health when they're doing these things. This is about, I want to be physically healthy, I want to be slim, or so on and so forth, right? But it's the same thing for mental health. The negative self-talk, the disaster thinking, or always thinking about the worst, not like just lacking positive thinking, the resiliency and coping techniques that you're referring to. So of course nowadays, like we keep repeating here, is that finally we are touching upon these subjects. So hopefully it's going to be a future, probably near future, hopefully, where it's just people taking care of their mental health or speaking about their mental health will not be frowned upon. Just like me going to the gym is never frowned upon.
Yeah. And you know what I just realized? I feel like I misread the health for illness. I don't know how I did that, but that's what I did. But you're right in that sense. In the same way, like you go to the gym, right? And people have these elaborate plans for their exercise, right? And when they're going to increase their weight and how many reps they're going to do, right? Where are those for our mental health? Right. And we should have plans like that for our mental health. Right. And monitoring our responses and our emotions and making sure we're progressing in the right direction and we are getting stronger as we can, just like we do with our physical health. So. Yeah.
No, that's why I had to bring up. I feel like it's a very important subject to touch upon. Like we need to talk about the fact that one day someone going to see, getting help, be a psychiatrist or whoever, we're going to look at that in the same light that we look at someone going to the gym to lose weight, and
getting a personal trainer. Yeah.
Things like that. Exactly. Right. So, but yeah, so this statement was really great. So, when we were talking about this in like our previous meeting, I love the statement that you said, and I felt like it really touched upon something about like for today's day and age. What do you think about the statement, normalizing not feeling okay? And talk a bit about that.
Yeah. That's a huge one. I feel like I could do a whole workshop on that. It's like, it's just, I think so many of us, I don't know how we all got it into our heads that we need to be happy all the time. I don't know who started this rumor, where it came from, but it's a total lie, right? Sadness, anger, frustration, those are all normal emotions to feel and to experience. They are part of this human life that we are living. And so just because you're feeling sad because something happened, that's okay. Now, what's not okay is if these feelings persist, they're now starting to impact your relationships, your life. That's not okay, right? Now we're talking extremes and we're potentially getting into mental illnesses. But just feeling sad because of something that's happened, that's okay. Feeling angry because maybe someone's, crossed your boundaries or said something not so nice to you, that's okay. You are not weird or crazy or bad for feeling like this. These are normal emotions to have. And I think that a lot of us, we start to freak out and think like, oh my God, I'm feeling sad. Is there something wrong with me? Does that mean something? Instead of just being like, I'm experiencing sadness today. You know what? It's just one of those days. It'd be like that sometimes, right? And
I've
just
been doing that
really,
more recently, actually. I want to chime in on that. I've
yeah,
done that recently, and honestly,
yeah,
it feels better to sometimes let go. Like, just be like, okay, today's one of those days. If I feel like being a couch potato, I'm gonna be a couch potato. Screw it,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
lo and behold, most of the time, next day, just going through the mentality of tomorrow's another day, boom, I don't feel like that anymore. So it's just like you were saying, I just had to really chime in on that because
No, I
we don't
love
let
that.
we don't let ourselves do that.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
And I'll be honest with you. I know I love that you shared that because so many of us do have difficulty with it. I'll be honest. I have a very hard time
Of
doing that.
course, of
Letting
course,
myself just
yeah,
relax when I need to relax because there's so many things I want to do. But again, mental
yeah.
health is a work in progress, right? And I like that you do that. And I encourage people, just to like call it out. Like if you're feeling irritated, frustrated, call it out and be like, yeah, I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling irritated right now. And it's okay to feel that way. Right. There's nothing wrong with not feeling. You don't have to walk around smiling all the time. Right. And if you are, then you might need support too. Or tell us your secrets, right? Or tell us your
Or
secrets.
that too. Oh man, spill the
Or
beans and
that
let
too.
us know, please.
So let us know, right? Because I haven't figured it out yet. So it'd be great to know. Yeah, and that's really important. And I think I actually notice with people who have experienced mental health concerns, I think that they have an even harder time with this because I know through my journey when I was starting to feel better, I would be so scared to let myself feel any sort of sadness because I thought that meant if I felt sadness, I was depressed again. And just, I really had to work hard over the years to separate depression from sadness and let myself be like, being sad doesn't mean that you're going to be depressed again, because I've worked so much on myself over the past few years. I've developed better coping, and I'm a way different person now than when I was 16. Right. And I think a lot of people going through mental health concerns, that's such an important thing to keep in mind, especially as you get better every single day, and to just let yourself feel. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get back down to rock bottom again.
I love that you bring that up too, because there was that fear. A lot of if I felt sad, I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna be depressed. Like I'm sure a lot of people who suffer depression could relate to that feeling because,
Yeah.
oh man, I've been there too, so I know that for sure. But yeah, speaking of depression, actually, wow, what would be your top 5 lessons about depression that you could pass on to
Yeah.
others suffering it?
I had to think about these. Number one is looking back, just like, not feeling crazy for how I felt. I have always been a way more emotional and sensitive person than other people. And it's great for me being a mental health, a doctor that focuses on mental health, but every other area of my life, it's tough. But just, recognizing that it's okay for feeling how you feel, even if you are chronically depressed or you're not in your best place, you are not crazy for feeling that way. And just really important to not label yourself these things, right? Things you label yourself, you become, and you start to associate yourself with that. So I think that was a big thing, because for years I just felt like I was crazy because nobody understood why I was depressed. I didn't even understand why I was depressed, but I didn't. I was very, very lucky to grow up in a loving home, and I had nice friends and a good social support system, and things were going okay. But I guess I wasn't okay, and it didn't make any sense to me. But so it is what it was. Another lesson was just not worry as much. I think that even a lot of young people today, and I remember me being that young person too, I would just worry all the time as to how things are going to turn out in my future and what was going to happen. And was I going to, I don't know, make it to that university or just whatever, right? And just knowing that things work out the way that they're meant to work out, and you just have to have faith in that. And I wish I could have learned that sooner than I did. Another lesson was just accepting the life that was given to me, in the sense of just knowing that, when I was going through my depression, I used to always look around at the people around me, and I don't even know if this was true or not, but I was like, things that made me anxious or really affected me just didn't affect my friends as much, and didn't affect, some of my family members as much. Right. And I feel like no one, and I guess that's because I'm a bit more on the sensitive side, but I wish that I just didn't fight so hard to just know that this is the life that I've been given, right? I have to work harder than some people on my mental health. Like I constantly have to wake up and make sure I'm doing my specific coping strategies. I have a routine and I just generally have to work harder on it. And I spent so many years being upset about that fact instead of just accepting it and working with it, right? These are the cards that you have been given in life. And it's like, how are you going to make the best of it, right? So that's definitely another big lesson that I learned. Another big one was just not being afraid to ask for help. I feel like my depression could have been cut down to a year or two instead of having it for 5 years if I had just asked for help sooner, and really just getting clear on what those signs and symptoms are and not being afraid to just be like, yeah, I'm suffering, I need help, right? Because that can just save you so much time and heartache, and really progress and that stage of just feeling good. And then the last one is, if you keep working at it, you will be successful. That was a huge one. And that's actually something I'm proud of for myself for the past 10 years, is no matter how many downs I had and bad days I had, every single day I would get up and I would just try to be better, try to be better, try to be better, and I feel like that was really that huge mindset that I had. And I was like, no matter what, I am overcoming this and nothing is going to stop me from it. And I think that just determination just really allowed me to finally get into a place where I had great mental health. And it wasn't an easy journey, and still, it isn't. I still have my ups and downs. But I really learned that if you work at something, and this goes to everything in your life, mental health, physical health, goals that you have, if you keep working at something and no matter how many times life brings you down, you say, I am going to get back up, you will be successful and nothing can stop you. And I can't guarantee the time frame of that and how long it's going to take, but I can promise you, you keep at it, you will be successful and you will get to that place where you want to get to.
It goes back to what we were talking about before. People have, I want to lose 100 pounds or something like that. It's the same thing. I want to feel better. And a lot of people who've gone through depression will actually relate to a lot of those lessons that you just said. Like I've literally, like every single one you just mentioned, I'm like, oh wow, like I've been there. And it's true. I really realized, I think it was probably in the past 2 or 3 years where I really decided, okay, this is it. I got time to take control of this. Like for example, if people want to treat me out to get to see me, it's like my self-worth was so low. I felt like it was insulting that I'm going to have this person pay for me or something like that. Right. It's just things like that. And then I realized that's stupid thinking. So I decided, time to fix myself, time to get that positive thinking. I really worked at it, just like, physical goals, mental goals. And I knew that it took that to be able to get everything else better, and everything falls in place right after you're able to take care of yourself better. So it's just really great that you speak of these things. But, why don't we end things off here today with the last question, where people could take these lessons and take these tools and be able to work on themselves and get to where they want to be. Just like, you're definitely just a super bright example of like someone getting right through depression, going through that bout. It's such a difficult battle. A doctor, you're being able to put yourself in a position where you can help people get those kind of goals. So what are some coping strategies you can give to others?
Before I actually give like specific coping strategies, just a little disclaimer on coping strategies in general and just, working on your mental health. I always just like to bring it back to, it's the simple stuff. It's literally the simple stuff. And that's a lesson I've learned during my journey too. Because before I would complicate everything and I was like, no, it can't be as easy as eating my vegetables and getting movement and enough sleep and saying nice things to myself. And lo and behold, it was all those things. Okay. I was like, no way, it can't be that. I literally remember talking to my counselor about it in university. I was like, it cannot be that easy. Like, stop. Like, you're lying. Like, literally, I remember talking to her about it. I was like, she was like, talk to yourself nicer. And I was like, oh my God, counseling is so stupid. I literally walked out of it for a few sessions and that's how I would think. And then going through my journey, I'm just like, oh my God, like it was all right. And when you start actually applying it, you start to see it. But it is the simple stuff. And it's all about making time for that simple stuff. Because really, and I'm still going to give coping strategies, as soon as you're saying coping strategies, everybody can already start to think of a few good things that they know they should be doing, but they probably aren't doing in their life. right? Most people that I work with, most of my patients are always like, I should be doing this, but I don't do this. And they all actually come up with their treatment plan for themselves. And I'm just trying to be like, you can do it, but it's true. And so always just keeping that in mind. If you feel like it's too much, too overwhelming, you've probably overcomplicated it, and go back to that simple stuff. Just something to always remember. So number one thing I would recommend in terms of, coping strategies, make a strategy around things. That's a big part of the work that I do with patients, right? Really getting clear on what are the situations in my life that give me anxiety? What are the situations in my life that make me feel not so good about myself or make my mood feel lower? And taking a step back and really reflecting on those situations and what is it about those situations and developing a plan around it. Right? So if you have situations that give you anxiety, is it because you're not expressing your needs in those situations? And what's really happening during that time, and helping yourself build a plan around it. Sometimes you can do this by yourself. Sometimes you might need support and help with other people, but that's one step towards it. Having a plan, especially when you have anxiety around specific situations, right? What's your plan around it? And I always say, when it comes to things like anxiety, if you want to get over it, you got to go through it. That's the only way to get over it. But the more that you avoid it, the more that anxiety takes over you and has power over you. But if you want to get over your anxious things, you have to go through it, right? So if social situations give you anxiety, go to social situation, expose yourself to it. So that's a coping strategy. Expose yourself to what makes you uncomfortable. Which
was it called again? Exposure therapy?
It literally is
the flippant term, yeah.
Yeah, but it's so powerful, right? Because then you start retraining your brain, because you start telling your brain, oh, I am safe in this situation. I'm not dying because I'm out at a party, because your brain jumps to that, oh my God, you're going to die, right? Because that's our brain is so primal still. Another simple, but such a powerful strategy is deep breathing. Okay. See, again, I was just like the simplest thing ever. And these are things in university I would look at and be like, oh my God, deep breathing. This is absolutely ridiculous. Right.
I used to think the same too. I agree. I know. I'm like,
right.
Breathing, get out of here. I do that all the time.
Right. Exactly. And so I always love to explain the whys behind it. Right. And this is a podcast, so you can't actually see the actions that I'm doing. But the reason why deep breathing is so helpful is so you have your lungs up here, and enclosed in your lungs are enclosed in something called your diaphragm, right? So if your lungs are up here, your diaphragm kind of sits down here. And so what happens when you take really deep belly breaths, and this is where a lot of us mess up because we breathe from our chest and not from our bellies. And so what happens is that when you take these deep belly breaths, right, your lungs expand, your diaphragm expands, and your diaphragm is connected to something called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve runs from your diaphragm all the way up to your brain, and it gets activated, and it tells your brain to relax. And it activates something called your parasympathetic system, which is your resting and digesting system. And that's what signals your body to calm down and relax. And so if you're not taking those deep belly breaths, you're not expanding your lungs enough, which is not expanding your diaphragm, and it doesn't activate your vagus nerve. So it's actually kind of really cool that our body literally has its own built-in system to help us relax in any moment we are in, which is actually so dope, right? But so many of us, we lead such busy lives, and honestly, a lot of us don't even know that we can activate it using this. And so, I mean, this is something that you can do at any time, right? I did this a few times when you were speaking in this podcast and you didn't even realize, right? And so it's such a powerful, powerful tool to use, and it's so simple, and it can help you be relaxed in any situation.
I just wanted to chime in on that. I remember reading an article about the fact of the chest breathing. So many people don't realize that because, in terms of social comparison, nobody wants to be fat, right? Whatever the case is. And so you're like, what? I got to expand my gut? No, that cannot be the case, right? They walk around like, but like if someone's sitting at home listening right now, try to breathe with your chest, like really compare, like, and then with your belly. Like there's so much more that you get in. And I remember when I was reading that article, I'm like, oh my God, I did the same thing reading that. I'm like, wow, what a difference. And I love how you bring up like the parasympathetic nervous system, because it's the same thing about like the exposure therapy. You say you have social anxiety, you go to a party, sympathetic nervous system's running. oh my God, you're in danger. Oh my God. And then you're just saying that's one of those moments where you can deep breathe to kind of just relax yourself, right? And then that way you're able to kind of keep yourself composed and you allow your body enough time to realize, oh wow, I could be in this setting without being in danger, right? So it was
Totally.
just, yeah, it was just really interesting to read about all that.
No, and I love that. And I'm actually, one of my patients who's a university student, he had social anxiety, and that's literally what he did. And I'm so proud of him because he's been getting so much better. And it's literally by implementing these simple strategies like this, because he
That's
gets
great to
into a
hear.
place, he's able to relax himself. And then he's like able to like actively engage and be like, I am safe in this environment with my friends. It's okay to be me, you know? And
Great.
he's been getting so much better as a result of that. And I'm so proud of him. It's incredible.
Love it.
And then the last, coping strategy I would have, I feel like those are pretty big coping strategies, but they work so well. I actually did a TEDx talk on this a month ago. And it's all about creating happiness systems. And that's a really big word. And what I described in my talk was just about us really just reflecting on our days, right? Because ultimately, if you can just focus on trying to make one day as happy as possible, then you got to just repeat, right? And obviously adjust a little bit because situations come up in the way and stuff, but it's all about reflecting on one day from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. Ask yourself, how many of the behaviors are you doing contribute to your happiness versus how many of the behaviors you're doing contribute to your sadness? You have more behaviors that contribute to your sadness, you're living a more of a sad life, right? Quotation marks. Doing more behaviors that lead to your long-term happiness, you have a happier life, right? And it all goes back down to even the smallest things, like, do you snooze your alarm clock in the morning, right? Because that's already setting your day up for something different versus not. Right? Are you giving yourself enough breaks throughout the day, right? Before, when you end work and when you enter into your personal life, do you have some sort of like a post-work ritual, right? That allows you to de-stress from work, right? The foods that you're eating, right? And the behaviors you're doing around that, right? Do you eat in front of the TV or are you sitting at a table and eating, right? And just really breaking down life and your day and just looking at behaviors. Because at the end of the day, we think thoughts, and thoughts are a huge part of mental health, but it's ultimately our behaviors that solidify those thoughts. And I always tell patients that, right? Whenever you are having an anxious moment or whenever you're depressed, what are the behaviors you're doing? Because most likely they're perpetuating those thoughts, those anxious and depressive thoughts. So sometimes it can be hard for people to jump from a negative thought to a positive thought, right? Because I've had moments where I'm just like, I'm trying to think positively, it's not working, there's something wrong with me, right? It can be hard sometimes. So to bridge the gap between that, you take positive action, right? Because the behavior can then solidify that thought, because you have 100% control over your behaviors, but you don't always have 100% control over your thoughts, because we have automatic thoughts and that's very normal. So really just breaking down your day, just focusing on just one day at a time, right? How can I make this day as happy as possible? What are the behaviors I can do? What are the perspective shifts that I can take over things that I can't control, but I can control my perspective on them, right? And just breaking it down. When you just focus on one day at a time, what happens is that one day turns into a week, which turns into months, which turns into years. And before you know it, literally in front of your eyes, you have built that life that you've always dreamed of. And it just started off by you working on one day at a time. One
And
day,
you're
one
allowed to
behavior
feel
at a
it.
time. You're allowed to feel it.
You're allowed to feel it. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh man. Honestly, I knew this podcast was gonna be great.
Yeah.
I knew you're gonna be super awesome. I knew from the, I
Thank
just knew.
you.
Oh man. Oh, it was such a great conversation.
Yeah.
I can listen to you the whole time, hours, man. Just TED Talk, for days. So I'm sure
Thank
many
you.
others share. I should tell the audience too. Like I was like fangirling. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I follow you because like I follow her on Instagram and like I see all her awesome little TikToks and all her little creation and I'm like, oh man, like then I see it's like a celebrity, right? So
Yeah.
to me,
Thank you.
so I'm sure anybody else
Yeah.
wants to feel that way. Where can they all find you?
Yeah, so I'm active on TikTok, Instagram, I have a Facebook page. I'm coming out with a YouTube channel by the end of this week. So you can all find me. That's all of those at Dr. Bisleen Attli. If you want to work with me, that's an option too. You can feel free to message me on DM on either one of those things. And then also, if you go on any one of my social platforms, you'll have access to like my website and some of the freebie things that I offer. So check me out at any one of those. Yeah.
If you want to hear more stories, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like. To support more youth by youth led projects, visit us at youthspeak.ca, where you can donate and spread youth mental health awareness.
YouthSpeak Performance Charity. Speak, inspire, change.